Hello and welcome to Field Interference. This is your host, Ryan G. on the Guerrilla Media Network. Thank you to Pete Santilli for putting this show together. I am here with Harry, a pro-life activist, and we are talking about pro-life and human rights. I don't consider myself a pro-life activist. I consider myself a human being who is very concerned about human rights. And we're just a couple weeks after the Walk for Life 2014. So I wanted to bring this issue to my show. I need to say that it is not a baby's fault that adults have irresponsible sex. The babies do not choose to become alive. It is the parents and their reproductive organs that bring this about. For some reason, we've gotten to a point in human development where people think that it is their right to terminate the life of a baby. It's gotten so bad that you actually have men who are so afraid to be fathers that they actually, at the threat of the woman's life, they actually force the woman to undergo abortion. And I think this is not only a crime against humanity, but it goes much deeper than that. Our legal system has decided that a baby starts to live at some point during pregnancy. I must say this is beyond me, because when you have a baby growing inside of a womb that has a beating heart and blood flow, how is it that that baby could become alive at some point? It's alive the entire time. And I have to say, if we cannot respect the rights of the unborn, how can we expect that any human being should have rights outside of the womb? I wanted to ask you, how long have you been a pro-life activist?
I've been a pro-life activist for 36 years. I got started in the summer of 1978.
Well, I got to say, I see that we live in a culture of death. Last week, I had a Dr. Paul Byrne on the show, which he is he retired in the past couple of years, but he has been a practicing neonatologist since 1957. And before his practice, around 1960, and shortly before, they were basically leaving babies in critical condition out to die. They didn't offer much help. He said pretty much if a baby was born premature and found itself in a critical condition, there was very little that doctors did. But he, out of his own compassion, decided that he was going to make his practice about finding out what can be done for these babies. And in the same way, I think that you, as a pro-life activist, have been very concerned about the life of the unborn and how people think of it. So I know that the culture of death dates back very far, but in this country it seems to have been very, very much revamped in the case of Roe v. Wade. So I wanted to ask you about Roe v. Wade. How do you think that the decision from Roe v. Wade has changed society, and what was it all about?
Well, what I see here, in my many years of pro-life activity, I've had a chance to reflect on this and see and examine, by many different ways, and reading, studying. I've seen the changes in families and what has happened to human values to become the just me, and what I want and need, of individuals. That breeds contempt for others, and also degrades any respect for human life in general here in America. Unborn babies are thought as disposable things instead of progeny of our human descendants, our children. And a quote from Dwight D. Eisenhower, he says, "Only Americans can hurt Americans." In fact, in the American Civil War, 600, and the 4 years that it went, 625,000, soldiers, people, civilians were killed in that time. Until abortion came to America, it became part of America's scene. That was the hugest numbers of Americans that were killed by Americans. Now, approximately an estimated 57 million unborn babies have been killed in America since the Supreme Court passed Roe v. Wade in 1973. That's a staggering.
57 million unborn babies killed. This is staggering, as you say. I think we have to really take a second and reflect on that number. I mean, you said 625,000 from the Civil War. Wow.
Yes.
So we have a vast change in this country as far as the culture of death is concerned. Death seems to have become commonplace. And it seems that human life has lost all respect in the eyes of the general American public. And I'm taken aback from just thinking about 57 million babies murdered. I'm somebody who considers myself a man who very much looks to the evidence above emotion, above faith, religion. I think that we have to go back to the evidence here. When does human life begin?
According to when human life begins, it says human development begins after the union of male and female gametes or germ cells during the process known as fertilization. We noted as conception. Fertilization is a sequence of events. I'm quoting now here from, of course, science books, biology books. Fertilization is a sequence of events that begins with the contact of a sperm, spermatozoon, what a name, with a secondary oocyte or ovum, and ends with the fusion of their nuclei, the haploid nuclei of the sperm and the ovum, and the mingling of their chromosomes to form a new cell. This fertilized ovum, known as the zygote, is a large diploid cell that is the beginning of primordium of a human being. This is from Moore's Keith and Essentials of Human Embryology, Toronto, B.C. Decker Incorporated, 1988, page 2. So right again, it's saying, what is happening? When does life begin? It begins in the darkness, in the seclusion of a woman's uterus. For when fertilization starts, a baby has begun. Yes, it doesn't look like a baby, but I assure you, given enough time, nourishment, the safety of a mother's womb, that baby will emerge as a human being, unless that baby is murdered by abortion.
Right, unless the baby is murdered. And it seems that this comes back to biology, really, and just basic science. As Monica Snyder said, you don't have to be religious to be in the pro-life movement. This is not a religious issue. This is an issue of science. And really, I got to say that it comes back to common sense. We men have the one part to the reproductive organs, and females have the other part. So when those two come together, it seems that that would bring about human life. So, Harry, you said you had something that you wanted to read on this topic, so please go ahead.
This is a story of a young person, a boy. On January 16, 2007, a remarkable journey came to an end in Covington, Louisiana. 16 months earlier, Noah Benton Markham's life had been jeopardized by the wind and rain of Hurricane Katrina. Although many of New Orleans residents tragically lost their lives in Katrina and its aftermath, Noah's story of rescue is nevertheless one of the many inspirational tales of heroism from that national disaster. What then makes it unique? And why did the story of his rescue and in 16 months after the event of September 2006? The answer is Noah has the distinction of being one of the youngest residents of New Orleans to be saved from Katrina. When the Illinois and Louisiana police officers entered the hospital where Noah was trapped, he was an embryo, a human being in the very earliest stage of development, frozen with 1,400 embryos in canisters of liquid nitrogen. Noah's story has a very happy ending. Noah's parents were overjoyed those 16 months later when Noah emerged via cesarean sections into the light of the wide world. His parents named him in acknowledgement of a resourceful survivor of an earlier flood. His grandmother immediately started phoning relatives and with the news, it's a boy. Now, if those officers had never made it to Noah's hospital, or if they had abandoned those canisters of liquid nitrogen, there would be little doubt that the toll of Katrina would have been 1,400 human beings higher than it already was. And Noah, sadly, would have perished before having the opportunity to meet his loving family. Let us repeat, Noah would have perished, for it was Noah who was frozen in one of those canisters, Noah who was brought from New Orleans by boat, Noah who was subsequently implanted into his mother's womb, and Noah who was born on July 16, 2007. This is taken from a book titled Embryo, Defense of Human Life by Robert P. George.
Wow, that's an incredible story. I mean, to me, it sounds like the antithesis to the pro-choice argument that a baby only becomes a human being at a certain point during the pregnancy. If this baby actually had to be inserted into his mother's womb at some point during the embryonic development process, it seems that there is a very valid argument there to say that he was a baby the whole time.
The whole time. We see, for instance, the newspapers, the media in general, are very hush on what abortion does. It wasn't until Gosnell, Kermit Gosnell in Philadelphia.
This is Dr. Kermit Gosnell of Philadelphia, who was found guilty on 3 counts of first-degree murder and I believe 1 count of involuntary manslaughter of one of his patients, who was, I shouldn't say one of his patients, the babies that he killed were technically his patients as well, but one of the women who came in to receive an abortion, it seems that he was responsible for her death as well, and the jury found that to be true.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I don't know if you since I followed it, were you aware that once the baby, he tried to kill the baby in the womb, but he obviously failed a number of times, and when the baby came out, he would take it it was a live birth baby. And of course, there were more than just the 4, the 3, and so on like that. But he would take a scissors and he would snip the spinal cord at the neck and kill the baby that way. So really what he was doing was infanticide, which is the killing of a born child.
Right, and this is also known as partial birth abortion because the baby is known as fully born once it leaves the womb, but if they can somehow kill it before it fully leaves the womb, they call it a partial birth abortion. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's another term that we've applied. It isn't by the abortionist doctors. They don't call it that, but we call it that. In other words, we can also apply our names to it. Partial birth means, because it first started that they would turn the baby upside down. You know, babies are normally delivered head first. But they would turn the baby and bring out first the legs, and then they'd work the arms out, and then they left the head in. The rest of the body's hanging out, and then what they would do is they would reach in, while the baby's head is still in, and then snip the neck with the scissors. But that was the procedure. That's what we call partial birth abortion. Now, Gosnell didn't didn't follow the technicality of that practice. What he would do is the whole baby would come out, still attached with the umbilical cord. And his job, what he was doing for these people is he was killing their babies. So then comes the scissors, he'd snip the spinal cord, baby dies. And so this is what he was doing, and this is what he was charged. There were workers with him that gave evidence. They were there as witness for the prosecution. And I don't know if you'd heard that he even had in the refrigerators, some places he had canisters of babies' feet. It's almost like you remember rabbits' feet and so on. He had souvenirs of babies' feet in jars, more than a few. In a jar. He kept them as souvenirs. The babies were disposed, who knows why, garbage, incinerators, but he kept feet.
Wow, that is absolutely disgusting. Well, I have to go back and say, when or how does the federal government define life, as in when you're dealing with the Roe v. Wade case and future cases since then, when did the federal government decide that life begins?
Well, if you say federal government, let's go back to the beginning. What do you consider the highest law of the land? The highest law of the land of this country?
Well, being that even the president swears to it, I must say the Constitution of the United States.
Absolutely. The Constitution of the United States is the highest law of the land. And here's what it says. I'm quoting from its preamble, okay, the very first words. The United States Constitution states in its preambles, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." Do you know who are our posterity?
Who's that?
Our posterity is our descendants, the people who would come after us. That's what the highest law of the land says, and we're not doing it.
So in other words, Roe v. Wade was the antithesis to this very statement. The blessing,
yes.
where they say the welfare and secure the blessing of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. This is the absolute antithesis to our Constitution.
Yes.
So what is the science here? What's the data, and how does our government ignore the data?
You know, our government sometimes passes bad laws, but here's what happened then, okay? Because of the unborn babies have no political voice, they are silent, you know. The Supreme Court in 1973 said they didn't know when life begins. So you say to yourself, well, why don't you find out? They didn't know when life began. So they were deemed as non-persons. And like Dred Scott, that's Dred Scott versus Sanford case of 1857, popularly known as Dred Scott decision. These children, meaning the children today, have fared the same way. In other words, these babies because of bad laws, are now the victims, just as black people were during the time of slavery.
Right. Well, I mean, during the 1700s, they did not want to define African American individuals as human beings, because otherwise they would have to follow the Constitution and respect their human rights. So I do see the parallel there, that just as with black people in this country, we have disrespected the human rights of the unborn. Is it true that there is a racist inspiration behind the creation of Planned Parenthood? Margaret Sanger, yes, who began Planned Parenthood, and I believe she was involved with Nazi propaganda and white supremacism in this country.
She very strongly believed in eugenics. Eugenics is the practice of breeding out or eliminating weeds or defects in human beings. Exactly what Hitler, in the establishment of a master Aryan race, she went right along with that. In fact, I believe that she went to, later in her life, was involved in what they called the German euthanasia project. And she very much was in line with that thinking. She thought that in this country, Jews, blacks, some Italian, some kind of nationality. She was Irish in her own background, and probably thought that certain what they call poor whites or something like that were probably in the same category. But she first started off with contraceptives. She thought that women getting pregnant was a curse. It was cursed to have children. And so there was the only way is you had to have contraceptives to stop the impregnation or becoming pregnant. So this is where she started, and she was arrested for it. This was contrary to moral laws of the country. But she persisted, others helped her, and so on like that. Eventually, she had, established her organization. And then later on, because of time and change and so on like that and support, it became Planned Parenthood Federation of America, who we know today Planned Parenthood.
Right. So it seems the practice of eugenics has much to do with racism and what's known as selective breeding. I just wanted to say that eugenics is defined as the science of improving stock, whether human or animal. Well, this seems to dehumanize just the idea of a human being, making them into the stock and an item. We are much more than an item, and we deserve our human rights respected. And I'll be right back with Harry right after this break. All right, I'm here with Harry, a pro-life activist. So according to the Constitution, the preamble, we must respect the lives of our children. So what do you propose that we do constitutionally to bring back human rights to the unborn?
Okay, I see one main way that we can do that. Okay, there are many different efforts already being done. I've seen it down through the years by pro-lifers. Every stripe, and size of pro-lifers. There's been many, many avenues in which they've been working. But what really encourages me is the growing number of young people, who are joining the ranks. And to me, it's very encouraging. These are called survivors, of which you are one because you're a young man. He says those who weren't killed by abortion since 1973 to now. Abortion has been the wrongly decided law of the land, which makes all of these unborn children in their mother's wombs as potential victims. And I have talked to kids who said, they've told me that they probably would have been aborted had their mothers not seen, pro-life literature or pickets at abortion clinics. And I'm very encouraged by what I saw when I went to the Walk for Life in San Francisco on January 25th this year, 2014, which had 60,000 persons marching. I tell you, what a swell of humanity there. And most of the people in that march Walk for Life were young people. I mean, it's so encouraging to us because I, as an older person, am, a senior citizen, these young people are the ones who will carry on the battle. And so what I am suggesting, as others have, we must pass a personhood amendment to declare that the unborn are people too. Just as an example of the 14th Amendment declared black people, they were slaves, were persons, and therefore afforded protection by constitutional law. That's what must be done for them, for these unborn children.
But we don't have that today, and we have to work for what we can do. And I understand that there's someone named Lila Rose who has uncovered a very interesting part of this pro-life saga, that that Planned Parenthood and other organizations are actually giving birth control and procuring abortions for minors. Is this true?
Yes, it is. I can say firsthand. Okay. See, what Lila Rose has done, she has proved beyond any doubt by using hidden cameras. This is the kind that can't be detected very easily. When she started her undercover investigation of Planned Parenthood clinics in various states, she first started in California. And this happened at the time she was going to UCLA. Okay. If you Google her name, Lila Rose, live action, you will be able to find and play many of these videos. These videos with hidden cameras are recording and exposing Planned Parenthood practices and exploitation of minor girls.
Yes, yeah, I've seen these videos. Lila Rose herself looks, or has the ability to appear quite young, and in these videos she seems to act younger, make her voice sound like a younger girl, and she tells them that she's anywhere from 12 to 14, I believe, and yet she gets all of the same services that an adult would. She catches this on camera. So how did you help Lila Rose to uncover these things?
Let me say that she has a lot of girl workers that are really young helping her. Now that she's older, in her middle 20s, it's kind of hard for her to play. But when she first started, she would look like a 14-year-old girl easily. Okay, I worked together with her and the small group of young people. She had a pro-life club called Live Action. Her desire, this was her heartfelt desire, was to end the practice of murdering the unborn and to turn our nation toward a culture of life instead, as it is now, a culture of death. This was always in her heart since she first became aware of what abortion was. I believe she was 15 years old at the time that she first read a book on the subject of what abortion was, and it shocked her. Shocked her very strongly, and she pushed the book away. Couldn't believe that in this country these helpless little unborn children were killed in their mother's womb.
So while many girls at 15 find themselves having promiscuous sex, Lila Rose was actually reading about abortion and finding herself very much in opposition to the gruesome act of vacuuming and tearing apart the body of a fetus.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, she just started in her quest, I guess, in direction. That's why she started this small group and really was a club. She called it Live Action. It is called Live Action today, and I became a participant of that. I was at the abortion clinic where I pick it, and she, not her, but a member of her group came by. And I asked him, I said, he was wearing a T-shirt and dealing with Roe v. Wade, and I asked him about, where was he from and why is a T-shirt and so on. He told me about Live Action. I was intrigued and wondered about it, so I became involved. And shortly after that, I joined this group. I was a mentor to them, a facilitator to her and the young people around her. She had essentially maybe 10 to 15 young people. And I worked with Live Action, Lila and other leaders in the group from about 2005 to 2010. This was about the time that she went to Washington, D.C. to set up her organization. But while she was still here and others, I went with them as if I were one of them. I'm its oldest member. I provided support by way of monetary fund, gave them equipment. This is electronic equipment, video stuff and projectors, took pictures, and I videotaped a lot of their work that they were doing as they put on presentations, at churches or different venues and so on. I went to all their meetings. I was a card-carrying member of the local San Jose, California Live Action. Okay? That's who I was. I still have my card.
Wow, so you were basically the reason why Live Action began to thrive and inform people about these events.
Yes.
So
I believe that I was. Yes, I believe I was.
So what exactly did Lila Rose uncover in these videos? I mean, I've seen a few of them. What's the aftermath of that you found that people have responded to these videos?
Well, it has changed a lot of minds. There's a woman, I'm trying to think of her name. I wasn't ready to bring it out, but she was a abortion worker. She worked in abortion in Texas, and maybe I'll think of her name, but she did, assisted in the abortion. She was not the murder doctor, MD, but she was an assistant. And when her eyes were opened by, things that Lila did, she quit. And many others have done. There's a number of people in Lila's organization, Live Action, Washington, D.C., that have joined her. They're abortion clinic workers. And her name is Johnson. What is her name? Abby Johnson. Okay. And there have been others. There have also been ex-abortionists or people who ran clinics who have quit. Bernard Nathanson, the most famous of all the, those that push for abortion. This, this is the kind of thing that, that people have changed their mind and no longer will do abortions. So it is a constant battle that we are undertaking here. But are you still there?
Yes.
Okay. All right. My phone was pinging at me here. So I'm very happy to say that live action. Oh, I can remember too that one time they were requested to go to the Dominican Republic. Next to there in the Caribbean. And they wanted to know. This was by invitation of the government of the Dominican Republic. They wanted to know. They were at the point of deciding abortion, and whether to have it in this island country. And they decided. They're right next to Haiti, by the way. And they did. They invited them to come and give them evidence as to whether they should go one way or the other. And to their credit, they went over there and presented young people presented to them positive proof that abortion was murder and that it was evil. And these people decided no abortion for the Dominican Republic. And that happened in the early 2000s. I forgot the year that they went. It could have been 2006, 7. I'm not sure. I just off the top of my head, I remembered that. Lila's also been to Ireland. She's been to other countries, and she's become kind of a celebrity in a way. If you're looking for a pro-life activist, that is her. She's also was on CNN. They did one on the specials of young people who are activists, and Lila was top of the line there too. So she's been on Fox News quite a number of times. She's been on with Glenn Beck when he was at Fox News. She is on radio stations and so on. That Lila Rose is well known. I am proud to have been a mentor to her and a facilitator, and to help her, give her more reason to continue the thought that she had and now the vision, and to carry it through. She is a formidable adversary of the pro-death culture, I say.
So has she uncovered, or have you, with your work with her, uncovered the government's, or whether state or federal government's involvement in abortion?
Yeah, the government has been funding abortion for a long time, and in this country, you've heard of the Hyde Amendment, have you? This goes back some years, Henry Hyde.
Right.
Let me read you what I find here, and so on like that. This is a article from CBS News that I got for this interview. On January 28, 2014, Washington, the House of Representatives voted Tuesday to bar federal subsidies to Americans signing up for health insurance plans that cover abortions. You got it? This is Obamacare, to ban it. Now, as Republicans issued a fresh warning about the impact of President Barack Obama's health care law. Ignoring a White House veto threat, which he threatened to do, majority Republicans led the House in voting 227 to 188 for the measure that they insisted was necessary to permanently ban any taxpayer dollars for abortion amid implementation of the 4-year-old law. Okay? In other words, he passed it 4 years ago. Representative Chris Smith, Republican in New Jersey, an abortion post, said the measure would codify the so-called Hyde Amendment. Okay, codify meaning make it permanent law. The current law that prohibits federal funding for abortion except in case of rape, incest, or to save the life of the mother, first passed in 1976. The Hyde Amendment has been added each year to spending bills and has banned federal funding for decades, okay? But they had to do it every year. But they want to make it permanent so that they don't. They want to use your tax dollars and everybody else's money to fund the killing of the unborn in this country. Taxpayers' money. Republicans argued that it wasn't sufficient in the face of the health care law. Under the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare, massive amounts of public funds in the form of tax credits, $796 billion in direct spending over 10 years, according to the Congressional Budget Office, will pay for insurance plans. Many, perhaps most of which will include elective abortion, Smith said. That massively violates the Hyde Amendment. Okay, so those are the things that we're dealing with. And I might as well say this too. And, or shall I stop there and I'll wait for a question?
No, that's please continue.
Okay. It says, can you imagine this, how nefarious it is that you feel strongly against abortion, but they would take your tax money and it would be a payment for, Planned Parenthood to kill another baby. You understand? This is the way that it works. As a result of this, too, there's other ways. Look, many companies with names that you are familiar with, you buy their goods, services from them. They donate millions of dollars each year to Planned Parenthood. You can check for yourself through the internet to verify this. And why do they do this? Because of the fact that they get, credit or subsidies, or some kind of tax credit from the government. So it's kind of a way around it. You say, okay, I don't want to fund it with my taxes, but these companies do it for you in a way. You buy their goods, you buy their services, and you indirectly are funding abortion.
Wow. So it seems to me that even when money on paper is not flowing directly from the federal government, it's the subsidies that are given through congressional approval to private organizations that actually end up funding Planned Parenthood and other organizations that procure abortions.
As hideous as that sounds, it is true. Yes, it is. Yep.
This just seems to be another way that the federal government tries to use our tax dollars for things that we don't approve of. It seems that the government is not concerned what the American public thinks about the way that it spends money. So I must say that here in the United States, we have allowed our government to run our lives from cradle to grave. We do not respect our own children's lives, and therefore our own lives have not been respected by the law. And our law tends to reflect the morals of the people who allow it to be. We have brought about this situation, and it seems only through selfishness and our own demoralization as a society that we have allowed this to come about. I just have to ask one final question. What is, as a pro-life activist for 50 years, what do you think the agenda of the government is, especially being that Obamacare is on our doorstep?
That's kind of, I'm guessing, but it seems like now I'm going to sound a little conspiratorial, but you know very well, you probably have heard that there are people who feel that there are too many people on the planet and it cannot be sustained. You've heard that?
Overpopulation is a principle taught in our schools and all over.
Yes, yes. I've even heard a little girl one time being interviewed by someone, that's Brian Sussman one time. He interviewed her, he heard about her, so he interviewed her. And this little girl, she's only about 7 or 8, something like that. She says that there are too many people. People poop, meaning poop out in the, like as if they were pooping out in the grass. Animals eat the poop and they die. And people are bad. People are bad in her own childish way. Where did she get that idea? Her mother is beaming while she's saying it. Totally untrue. But they begin to, you can see that the propaganda, the public schools, they're saying humans are bad, animals are good. We need, to do something about human beings. And what, as a result of it, there are efforts to kill as many human beings as possible. This seems to be the agenda. It isn't just a woman's right anymore. We've got to depopulate the planet. This is why there is so much. We're living in a time like the 20th century, the last century. More people died in it than in all the other centuries that preceded us down. You can go back thousands and thousands of years, but there has never been a time when more people were died. Most of that was due to war, but there was also disease and other types of genocide. But now with abortion, and that was part of the 20th century. We're now in the 21st. But more and more people are being killed by genocide. China, India, the United States, Europe, and so on like that. Human beings are being slaughtered. It's a genocide against human beings. And there are people who want to take the number down even smaller. There are people who are talking. Now you say, oh, these people are madmen. But they're serious. They want to reduce the population. They do not like the fact that we're somewhere, in the billions of people, with China and India leading that. And they want to reduce it way, way down. How do they do that if it isn't by wars, disease, and abortion?
Right.
Kill the baby before it can live.
Well, it's much debated among etymologists, but I feel pretty confirmed in this idea that government comes from 2 Latin words, gubernare, mens, to control the mind. And It seems that government, their one goal is to control us. And it's hard to control a large population. So maybe this is all about depopulation. Maybe this is all about genocide. So we have to consider that, and I for one will not be controlled. So thank you very much for being on the show today, Harry.
It's a pleasure to be on with you, Ryan. Thank you for inviting me.